Hello again, it's Debbie from acrylicpouring.com, and today I'm going to have a bit more spinning fun. I've got my record set up here on my turntable, and I've got a few different coloured paints today. Now if you've watched some of my videos in the past, you'll know that I really like the rich, deep, dark kind of colours. But of course they're not everyone's taste, and so today I'm trying to do something different. The last record pour that I actually did primary colours, white plus red, yellow and blue, and it still came out really dark, far darker actually than I even like. So that one has been scrapped, and today I'm going to try some much lighter colours. So I still have the white. I've got here a violet, which is a nice rich purple, so that one's good. And then this one, which is sour apple. See, that's a kind of pastel green. Bubblegum. And this one, for some reason, called purple cow. So you can see they're not my usual colours. They're quite kind of spring, Easter, that kind of thing, you know, pastels. But I thought, seeing the last one came out so dark, I'm going to try the lighter colours with one darker one for contrast, and let's see what happens. So everything's ready. I just need to finish mixing up the paints and then we'll get started. Well, I just mixed up my paints and I had the strangest reaction today, which is something I thought it would be worth sharing with you. My paints, the darker purple, this one always comes a lot thicker. It's in the big kind of economy ones, and these are thicker for me. So this was 1 tablespoon of paint along with half a tablespoon of Floetrol, and then around a teaspoon of water and a couple of drops of silicone, and I think that one is good to go. And then when I mixed these other ones, these were the little craft paints. For one, they're a lot more runny. So normally I'll mix a tablespoon of the paint, excuse me, with half a tablespoon of Floetrol, and then, you know, mostly just like a couple of spots of water, and that's it. And everything was fine, the paint was just right. And then today, when I added, yeah, you can see it there, when I added the silicone, the paint seemed to have some kind of reaction with a few drops of silicone, and it made all these kind of little funny jelly lumps in the paint, and it became like quite big long strings. So it's stuck now. Can you see this? Long strings of kind of jelly that definitely weren't there before, and then when I added the silicone, it kind of mixed in and created these kind of, I don't know whether it is some kind of skin or some kind of reaction with the paint anyway. So the paint in these lighter colours, these craft paints, these are quite an odd consistency now. They were fine, and I've added a bit more water and kind of tried to thin them out without adding too much, but now they're just a little bit strange. They don't run like they did before I added the silicone. Now it just seems a little bit off, a bit kind of funny. Like, the only word I can say is like it's jelly. You know, like jelly before it sets, it's a little bit like that. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. But anyway, let's just go for it and see. I need to get a cup, and then we'll pour all these in, and it may go right, it may go wrong. Okay, so I've got my cup, we're ready to go. I'm going to start with a generous layer of white in the bottom, and then contrast that with this nice rich dark purple, and that one is still running out nicely. Let's see what happens when I try and pour these other ones, these jelly kind of paints. Ooh, yeah, snotty. Okay, well, we'll go with it. I don't like to waste things, so at least we can try and paint with them and see what happens. But I think you can hear, as I'm putting them in the cup, they sound different. You see, they're kind of, and they're still thin. I couldn't thin them anymore, but they're different, definitely different. Let's go with a bit more white, because I will definitely want to try and make it lighter today. So a bit of purple, not too much, because I'm crazy with the dark colours. Let's go back to these jelly colours. If we can add a bit more of these. Ew. Oh dear. My best laid plans and all that. But that's odd. Of all the paints that I've mixed, I've used this brand before. I mean, not all the time. I mostly use the bigger economy colours, but I've used this brand before with silicone, and I've never had the trouble that I've had this time with them all going kind of funny and stringy, but we'll see. So there's not much going on there in the cup. Let's add a little bit more white to the mix, because I always like to make sure I've got enough. In fact, let's just go for it. Let's add all of these in, because if I've got some left over, I can use it on another project. I like to paint on tiles. They're reasonably inexpensive and they're kind of useful, you know, you can use them around the house. So if I've got paint left over, I can do that. Okay, so that's all of that one. And after all, if these paints don't turn out to be terribly usable because of this strange jelly thing, then I don't want to have to save them for anything else or flush them down the sink. They may as well all be in here and it'll work or it won't. Ooh, yeah, it seems to be thickening up even more now as it's standing. Definitely some kind of reaction. Ooh, snotty to the paints today. So it will be interesting to see, because obviously with the paints being thicker and more jellified, as they're spinning on the record today, they may not spread out in the same way. So it'll be interesting to see if I get any kind of different effect. So here's my cup. Everything's in there and ready to go. So I'm just going to quickly spin this. It is a bit noisy, so I apologise for that. And then I'll pour from the centre outwards. Well, just need to stabilise it a bit. Come on. My plastic is moving, so I can get everything to stay steady. Okay, well, it's definitely not dark. We can definitely say that about it. It's interesting, it's got some nice shapes. It's quite light. It's not necessarily my own personal choice when it comes to colour palette. And I wonder whether it has enough contrast, whether I should try and do something more, whether I should re-pour on the top with a bit more purple. I don't know. I might just leave it for a few minutes and see what develops, because I'm anxious if I torch it, then it could create like a skin on the top and it wouldn't do well if I then decided to re-pour on the top. So I'm just going to turn the camera off, leave it for a few minutes, and we'll see what happens to it. So I've left it a few minutes and not much is developing here on its own, but I am aware that the colours, especially this purple, when it dries, it tends to dry darker. So I think although it looks kind of pale and pastel right now, that when it dries it might actually dry a bit darker than it is. So I've already got some, you know, nice interesting areas and interesting shapes where it's kind of almost like ziggy-zaggy here around the outside. So I think I'll give it a torch and we'll see if it brings out a bit more in the way of any cells. Okay, so it has brought a little bit more interest out, some nice lacing around the edges just here, but it hasn't brought much out in the way of any of the darker colours. But I still think I like it. I'm happy with it, and you know, it might not be 100% my taste, but it's always nice to paint something a little bit different, isn't it, where it's outside of your colour preference. So these pastels are quite pretty, and my husband will be happy to hear that at last I've painted something that isn't all black, or he thinks they're all like black or purple or copper or something, because I do like my dark, rich and metallic colours. So I think we'll call this a success. As usual, I'm going to zoom in now and show you some of the details, and then come back at the end and show you when it's dry and all finished. So here you go from my point of view. It's got some nice little bits and pieces here. It's very pretty, very pastel, but there are some really pretty cells and some nice areas of interest. I'm creating a shadow with my camera, but there we go. So it looks quite pretty. I shall reserve judgment until it's dry to see whether it does dry up a little bit darker, but I'm sure this will be definitely somebody's cup of tea, even if it isn't exactly my kind of favourite colour scheme. But hubby will be happy. Right, hang around to the end, I'll show you what it looks like when it's all finished. So here it is finished and all varnished and glossy and looking good to go. And actually, now that it's finished, I'm really surprised at how much I do like it. I don't think it will be one of my all-time favourites, but it looks really pretty, it's really nice, and it's been lovely to paint with something other than my usual colours for a change. So there we go, all finished and ready to go off to a new home. So thank you very much for watching. I've enjoyed this one. I hope you've enjoyed a little bit of change of pace and a little bit of a lighter touch with the colours too. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you at acrylicpouring.com very soon.